Okay, it's working. Okay, so we are going to begin. So, we are going to continue with our exploration of the book of Ruth. Hopefully this will work. All right, so we were. I think we finished chapter 2, correct? Last week?
Yes.
Where Ruth tells Naomi that she went to the field of this man called Boaz, and she says, oh, that's great, his family. And she says, and I want to begin there. Let's begin on the last verse of chapter 3. So for those of you who have many sets of photocopies, we are on the one that says Ruth in the cover. Chapter 2, I'm sorry. Last verse of chapter 2.
Oh, I left that in the.
That's verse 23. There are extra, if anyone needs more photo, you have it there. You have it there. No, it's there. It's the same. The one that says Ruth in the cover. That's
Trying to find out. Right here? It's okay.
this one. The one that says Ruth in the cover.
This is chapter 2.
No, this isn't it, Jamie. Jamie. Oh, this isn't it. It's the one that says Ruth on the cover. You have it.
So this is chapter 2.
I have it also. In my phone. Yeah, well. I'm so careful to put
All right,
it in a
so-
safe place.
So there we are. We are going to begin there where we left. Last verse of chapter 2
Gracias.
says, so she, let's begin on the 22nd, else it won't make sense. Naomi answered her daughter-in-law Ruth, it is best, daughter, that you go out with his girls and not be annoyed in some other field. So she stayed close to the maidservants of Boaz and gleaned until the barley harvest and the wheat harvest were finished. Then she stayed at home with her mother-in-law. Okay? Are we all there?
Yeah.
So two interesting things about this last verse. The first word where it says, so she stayed close to the maidservants. In Hebrew, there's a different word. It doesn't say she stayed close. It says batidvak. Batidvak means literally she stick. She was stuck to the maidservants like with glue. And why is this important? One of the things you probably notice is that one of the tools that we have to understand the book of Ruth is to do intertextual readings, to see when a word is echoing something else from the Torah or from our sources. So the word batidvak is found for the first time in the Torah in the book of Genesis, when the Torah speaks about the first man ever created and his wife, Adam and Eve. The Torah says that one day the man will grow up and he will devak ve'ishto. He will stick to his wife and they will be one flesh. So when Naomi is telling Ruth, go stick to the maidservants that work in the field of Boaz, do not separate with them, else other people will annoy you, will bother you. Stick with them. That stick word is implying something. It's implying the idea that when you stick to someone, then that's until death parts you. That's something more than stay close to. It's being really, really close. And it has the last verse of chapter 2 opens the door to chapter 3, which will have a completely different kind of language that will be fully connected to some kind of love relationship between Ruth and Boaz. This word batidvak, she stuck with the maidservants is opening the door to somehow an erotic or kind of intimate language that will be the key language of chapter 3, which we are going to begin right now. Okay? So, chapter 3. So again, imagine this is a theater play. Lights go off. Chapter 3, something else is going to begin. And how do we know that? Just for you to understand. How do we know that we are going to see a completely different scene? That we are not going to continue on the same scene that we were in chapter 2? Because the last words of chapter 2 are a literary device to make the reader feel we have moved on. Because it says, and gleaned until the barley harvest and the wheat harvest were finished. So how long does that take? How long is the period of barley and wheat harvest? It's a couple of months. So the text here is saying a couple of months later, but the way it has to say that is that she gleaned until the end of that period, and then she went back to her home. This is implying also that during that period she spent more time at Boaz's field than at her own house, because if after that period is finished she goes back to Naomi's home, that means during that period she was not staying at Naomi's house. Okay, so now she goes back to her home with her mother-in-law. And now we begin chapter 3, from my perspective, the most beautiful chapter of the book. So, Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "Daughter, I must seek a home for you where you may be happy." So again, if you read this together with the last verse of chapter 2, the last verse of chapter 2 implies that she's living with Naomi, and the opening of chapter 3 implies that Naomi wants her to live somewhere else. And this again resonates with the first chapter of the book of Genesis, where the Torah says, והיה כי יעזוב איש את אביו ואת אמו ודבק באשתו והיו לבשר אחד. There will be a day in which the man, the grown-up adult, will abandon his parents' house to stick with his wife and be one flesh. So here again we have the stick word, and now we have the word abandon my house, leave my house, because I need to find somewhere else for you to live. Is this because...
Doesn't the woman leave to go?
Well, but in this case, according to the Torah, is the man the one who abandons his parents' house, the first chapter of the Torah. Then we see that in general, people go to live with their father's tribe, let's see, with the masculine side of the family, with the male. But here, but in general, and this is, you can think on this in contemporary terms, wedding, growing up means you leave the nest, means you go live with someone else. So here Naomi is telling Ruth, you have to move on. We have to find a place for you to live. Daughter, I must seek a home for you. And the word daughter is implying this idea that she's treating her as her own mother. I must seek a home for you where you may be happy. Now it's interesting that she is saying, I must seek a home for you. So Naomi wants to take the lead on this. Naomi wants to be in charge. She feels she has a responsibility towards Ruth. Because after all, Ruth came to live in Bethlehem because of Naomi. So Naomi feels some kind of guilt for the fact that Ruth is still living with her. But also, we must never forget that once Ruth told Naomi that she met Boaz, Naomi saw an opportunity there. Because, as we learned last week, Boaz can redeem the field of the family, can reinstate their dignity as a family in Bethlehem, and can eventually, even though he's not obligated to marry her because he's not her husband's brother, but there is some kind of responsibility from the family towards them, and the man to take that responsibility should be Boaz. So, verse 2 says, now there is our kinsman Boaz, whose girls you were close to. he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor tonight. Okay, so now here we have very, very clear intentions on Naomi's side. So she says, she doesn't say first go with Boaz. First she opens with a more generic idea. We need to find someone for you. By the way. So it's like that happens in all Jewish families. You know, you have your kids coming home and you want to make a shidduch with the neighbor's daughter, and you're not going to say, why don't you check the neighbor's daughter? First of all, you say, I was thinking maybe it's time for you to find someone, to develop a relationship. And by the way, do you remember our neighbor? He has a daughter. And so that's what Naomi is doing. Naomi first, prepares the ground for her conversation, but she has the plan from the beginning. She wants Ruth to have something with Boaz. Now, of course, the Megillah told us last week that it was the end of the barley and the wheat gleaning. So now it's time to work with that harvest and to transform that into food. So where is Boaz? At the threshing floor, at the place where the grain is worked, is treated. So she knows, who knows? Naomi knows, so she did some intelligence. And she knows that Boaz, whose girls you were close to, he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor tonight. So we have a plan. He will be there, he will be alone, he will spend the night at the threshing floor. You should do something with that. Now, if it wasn't enough with this reference to chapter 1 of the book of Genesis, there is a key word here that should light some signals to us. So if you see, she says, now there is our kinsman Boaz, whose girls you were close to. Okay? You see that you were close to. Again, a literal translation is not that she was close to. A literal translation of this is that she knew them. How do you say knowing in Hebrew? To know a person, to know something? Yodea. Okay, in Hebrew we say Yodea. Yodea is the verb in a present form, third person or first person singular. And ni Yodea, who Yodea? I know, he knows. That's Yodea. The infinitive is ladat, the equivalent to knowing. And the past is yada, he knew. Okay? Now, something very important. And for those of you who have studied in Spanish the book of Genesis with me, you are already used to this word. Knowing in the Bible is a synonym with having sex.
Being intimate.
Yeah.
When you know someone, so the first time the verb yada or ladat appears in the Bible is in the history of the first couple ever, Adam and Eve. The Torah says, and Adam knew his wife Eve, and she became pregnant, and she gave birth to Cain. Now, if you know someone and then she becomes pregnant, that knowing is not, I know this person. No, it's not that kind of knowing. It's an intimate knowing. Why the Torah uses the verse knowing to speak about sex? Two reasons. First of all cultures, when we speak about sex, we usually use an euphemism. We don't like to say they had sexual intercourse. So we say make love, slept together, spend the night, all these words, because we don't like to refer to sex as sex. So because of modesty, of course, because we feel shy about speaking about sex openly. The Hebrew word to speak about sex without saying we're speaking about sex, one of these Hebrew words, we will learn the second one in a couple of minutes, is knowing. Now this has a very interesting meaning, because according to this, having intimate sexual relations with another person is about knowing the other person. The deepest way we can know a person is if we know that person naked, if we know that person in the most essential way in which two people can get together, which is the sexual encounter. So it's very interesting when I teach these texts and other texts, for example, to teenagers. This idea that for Judaism, if you have sex, it's with someone that you know and that you know well. And you don't have just spend the night with someone. You need to know people. And having sex is the ultimate step in the process of knowing your couple. And it's not the beginning. You don't start from there. You start knowing each other, and once you know each other well enough, then you can really know the other person. Okay, so it's a beautiful thing that Judaism decided that knowing is going to be the euphemism for sex. Now, does it mean that Ruth knew the maidservants of Boaz in that sense? Of course not. But the fact that here we have the word knowing after we have the word stick, it's starting to create an atmosphere. The reader is already prepared for what is coming, because we have Vatitvat and you have Modat. So we are starting to pave the road to an intimate encounter between Ruth and Boaz that is going to fail. Spoiler alert, this is going to fail. They are not going to have sex this night, but this is what Naomi has in mind. So, and you will see how there's a crescendo on the text that starts creating some erotic atmosphere here. So, she says, this is still Naomi speaking, bathe, anoint yourself, dress up, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not disclose yourself to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. So what is Naomi saying? What's Naomi's advice here?
Let him relax.
No, wait. So first, take a shower. Anoint yourself. Anoint yourself meaning
Perfume yourself.
perfume and cream and oil, whatever, to make yourself even more beautiful, more seductive. Okay. Now, what do we know about these things? What do we know about bathing and anointing ourselves and dressing up? Some things about this. There are some things we know. First of all, these are the things we should avoid on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, we don't anoint ourselves. These are there of the 5 prohibitions of Yom Kippur. Here we have eating, drinking, anointing ourselves with oil, taking a shower, leather shoes, which is the equivalent here to dress up, royal clothes, and having sex. So she, the oil and the shower and the dressing up is all connected to mundane pleasure, to things that have to do with either sex or other kind of pleasures. It's not a spiritual thing. She's not telling her, go read Torah so that you have a good sermon to tell Boaz. She's not telling her, write a poem. She's telling her, dress up, be ready, be seductive. So, go down to the threshing floor, but do not disclose yourself to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. So what's the story here? What this story connects us with?
Make him satisfied.
Okay, so many things. First of all, we learned last week the story of Judah and Tamar. You remember? Tamar dresses up as a harlot and does not disclose her real identity to Judah until they have sex. So here Naomi, who knows the family history, Naomi knows that Boaz is a descendant of Tamar, and that sometimes the trick to get someone into bed works. So she says, dress up, put your perfume, put everything, do your hair, everything, and do not disclose who you are. Do not show yourself until he is ready for this. So there's some lying element here. There's some tricky element here. Because it's not that she's going to go to the threshing floor and say, hi Boaz, I'm Ruth, do you remember me? I want to have dinner with you. No, she's going to disguise herself in some way. Now the eating and drinking appears together in the Bible many, many times, And in many occasions, the eating and drinking is connected to sex. For example, the golden calf. The golden calf, it says that the people arose, ate and drank, and did other things. Now, the other things are not implied here, but eating, drinking, we know that eating and drinking, we know what comes after eating and drinking. Okay? Not only that, but actually we have a story in the Bible, which is the story of Yael, who is a warrior, a female warrior who cuts the head of an enemy's general after she gets him drunk. We know, and also we know that Lot, you remember Ruth is a descendant of Moab, and we know that Moab was born after Lot's daughters gave him food and drink and then raped him. And we also know the story of Noah, who planted a vineyard and drank all the wine, and after he was drunk, his son raped him. So we know that with eating and drinking comes something else. The book is creating this context. And if this wasn't clear, she says, this is Naomi speaking. So Naomi took the lead on this and is going to explain Ruth how to seduce Boaz. When he lies down, know the place where he lies down and go over and uncover his feet and lie down. So this is beautiful. His feet. His feet, how do we say feet in Hebrew? Raglaim. 2 raglaim, 1 regel. Okay, raglaim.
They're going to play footsie.
Regel. Now, the word used here is not regel, it's margelotav. Margelotav is an elegant way of saying feet. Okay, it's not regel, it has regel in the root, regel here, but the word is margelotav. The tav means his margelot. Now margelot, literally, even though the root comes from the root of the word regel, literally means pearls. Margelot is like precious stones or pearls. Now Naomi is saying, when the lights go off, you identify the place where he is staying, and you see it at his feet, or precious stones, and it's plural. It's a very, very suggesting language here. Also because usually when someone is lying on a bed and we want to sit with them, the word that the Torah uses is merashotav, on his head. When someone is lying down and you want to sit next to them, what's the place you choose? The head, not the feet. Unless you want something there, unless you lost something on that side of the bed. So Naomi is being very explicit. I want to read you something here from the commentary that I have. It says, Naomi's provocative instructions now climax with this directive, which is loaded with possible double entendre. See the following 3 comments, wherever. Ultimately, however, it is not clear precisely what Ruth is supposed to do when she meets with Boaz. So it says feet, Hebrew margelot, translated feet, occurs only in Ruth and in Daniel, and it is paired with arms. It refers either to legs or to the space on the ground around them. Given the Bible's use of the related root regel, foot elsewhere as a euphemism for genitalia, and it quotes Isaiah and other places, margelot could carry this connotation here. On the other hand, the author or editor may have deliberately placed this term for legs in Naomi's mouth instead of the more familiar word regel, precisely to exclude the sexual connotation, calling the reader's attention to the ground around Boaz's feet. Although it's unlikely that Naomi would explicitly instruct to expose Boaz's genitalia, this frigid and ambiguous language further intensifies the sexually charged atmosphere. Okay, so this is the commentary, the JPS commentary on the book of Ruth, and it brings many sources to support this view. So it's clearly, she's clearly implying something erotic that she has to do with him. Now, I want you to have in your mind the image. He's at the threshing floor, and she's saying, when he lies down, after he eats and drinks. So she goes there, she dresses, she puts perfume, oil, she showers, she's ready for whatever happens, but she's not revealing herself yet. And again, there is a connection between this and the story of Judah and Tamar. Tamar not revealing her own identity. And what other story is connected with this? The story of Yaakov and Leah. Jacob, when he sleeps with Leah, even though he's in love with Rachel, why he sleeps with Leah? Because he doesn't know who he's sleeping with until the morning. So she is telling you, dress up, do not reveal yourself after he finishes eating and drinking. And when he lies down, because he had an extenuating day of work and he ate and he drank, now he's going to sleep. When he lies down, go over and uncover his feet and lie down. Now we imagine he's wearing a robe or something like that. She needs to uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what you are to do. So this is sexual education from the biblical times. And this is very interesting. No, because sometimes we need to connect this with you know, the idea that he will tell you what to do tells a lot about gender roles and power in the days of the Bible. The idea that the woman doesn't need to know what to do, she will be instructed by the man whom we assume is more experienced. I will tell you a Talmudic story. Yes.
I'm amazed. Because
And this is the Bible.
that's what I mean. In my time, maybe it's not so. In my time, you were supposed to save yourself until you got married. My father would have disowned me if I'd gone to bed with
Okay,
somebody.
so let me explain something about this.
Killed me.
Okay, so in biblical times, that's a very good
Well,
point.
not today.
In biblical,
I know that.
let's start from the end to the beginning. According to contemporary Jewish tradition, since the Middle Ages, when a couple wants to get married, there are three things that need to happen, and that's stipulated in the Talmud already, in the Mishnah, in Tractate Ketubot, in Tractate Kiddushin. I'm sorry. It begins by saying, "Bishlosha drachim ha'isha niknet." There are 3 ways through which a woman is acquired, and these 3 ways are kesef, bi'ah, ushtar. That's in Hebrew, but the translation is kesef means money, bi'ah means sexual intercourse, and shtar means a contract. Now, in contemporary Judaism, since the Middle Ages, we need the 3 of them. It's not either or, it's the 3 of them. For a couple to be officially married, we need them to have a contract, that's the ketubah, have a monetary exchange, that's the ring, the golden ring or whatever valuable metal ring that we give, and the sexual encounter. And that's why in a traditional wedding, when the wedding is over, we escort the couple to a room, we let them into the room, we close the door, they do nothing there. In real life, they do nothing, but theoretically, the fact that they have been between closed doors for a moment means that we assume they had sex. And technically, until they have real sex, the marriage is not consummated. Now, if we go earlier in time, these were not 3 conditions, but were 3 options, 3 different ways to acquire a woman. One was a contract, another one was a monetary exchange with the family of the woman, and the other one was sex, meaning it's not that people had sex before the wedding in biblical times, it's that having sex was the actual wedding. The moment a man and a woman had sex, that woman was married to him. There was no ceremony. I mean, we will see that there is a kind of ceremony later, but if there was no ceremony, so for example, when Shechem, the son of Hamor, rapes Dinah, that's Genesis 37, if I'm not wrong, or 38, he rapes Dinah, and the family says, now you have to marry her, and we have a problem because you are not circumcised. Meaning, if you sleep with someone, the consequence is that you have to maintain and support that woman. And the same goes in the book of Deuteronomy. We have a beautiful text about the law of the war. and it says, if you win a war over another nation, and you find a beautiful woman within them, and you want to keep her, you want to sleep with her, you cannot just sleep with her. You need to give her time to mourn her father and her mother, who supposedly have died in the war, and you need to give her time to change her looking, and after that period of time, there is a month, if you still like her, you can propose to her. But if you sleep with her, she's going to be your wife. There's no chance in the Torah for the man to have just casual sex with this woman and then dump her in the street. That's not an option. So it's not that they are going to have sex before the wedding, it's actually that through having sex, they are going to be married. Actually, let me bring you something interesting connected to that. I have two nice things to share with you, two nice stories. The first one is in the Torah. When Adam and Eve have sex, and she becomes pregnant with Cain, she says, Kaniti ish et Adonai. I'm going to name this boy Cain, because Cain comes from the root Kaniti. Kaniti means I have acquired a man. A man is Cain with the help of God. So that's the traditional understanding of the verse. I have acquired a man, a son, with the help of God. Now there is a midrash that says the following. When she says I have acquired a man, it's not referring to Cain. Cain, of course, she has acquired. It's her son. Who is the man she acquired? Adam. The moment she becomes pregnant from Adam, he's locked in. Meaning I slept with him, I became pregnant, now he cannot dump me. He cannot leave me. Okay? So now going back to this idea that he will show you, I want to tell you one of the most beautiful stories about intimate relationships in the Talmud is the story of the son of Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva had a son, his name was Yosef, and you need some context for this. There is a tradition that has been there for generations, that after the wedding night, the friends and the family of the groom ask him, matzah or motzeh? Matzah, in Hebrew we write it this way, and motzeh this way. Now it's not matzah, no, it's a different spelling. Matzah or motzeh. Matzah or motzeh means to find, finding. Have you found or have you found? Okay, it's synonyms. It's a different verbal times, but it's the same thing. Matzah or motzeh. Why is matzah or motzeh? There are two biblical verses. One in the book of, the two of them I believe, in the book of Ecclesiastes, if I'm not wrong. One verse says, Matzah isha, matzah tov. The one who finds a woman, he has found the good. The other verse says, Motze ani mar mimavet et aisha. If there's something that I find even better than death, is women.
Wow.
So two verses, both written by King Solomon. One says that whoever finds a woman, he finds the good, the ultimate good. And the other one says that if there's something that one can find that is better than death, that's a woman. So the tradition was that after the wedding night, the friends went to the groom and said, "No, matzah motzeh." So if he said motzeh, it means it went wrong. If he says matzah, it means that it was good. Now the story in the Talmud says that the son of Rabbi Akiva got married with a woman, and on their wedding night, and that's why I want to connect this with this idea that he will tell you what to do. On the wedding night, they had no idea what to do. No one told them, and that's very common in traditional families. In ultra-Orthodox families, even in the 21st century, don't have a lot of sexual education. So they don't know what to do. They don't watch Netflix, they don't watch movies. What to do? There's a wedding night. What am I supposed to do? So the woman, so he, in the wedding night, the son of Rabbi Akiva, opens a book. And he stands there in the room reading a book. And she says, what am I supposed to do? Is there anything I can do to make your night more pleasant? And he says, sure, hold the candle for me. And she holds the candle the whole night while he goes through the pages of the Torah.
I think that's so
And at the
cute.
end of the night, when the friends ask him, Matzah Motzeh, he says, Matzah. Because it's wonderful. I wanted to study Torah the whole night, and she stood there next to me, holding the candle for me. Now, this story, that is from Talmudic times, is a 2,000 years old story, more or less. It's beautiful because when you read it in Hebrew, it has a lot of erotic implications. The candle, she holding the candle, the word in Hebrew that it says that he is exploring and discovering each of the pages of the book. There's some connotation there that can lead us to understand that there was not only studying on that night. But in general, I think it's beautiful because we can see through that story how little the people knew when they got married what to do on that night. So that's why Naomi is telling Ruth, which of course we shouldn't lose track of the story.
No, right.
Ruth was married once
Right.
to her own son, but she didn't become pregnant. So for some reason, Naomi is assuming that she will not know exactly what to do, or she forgot. We don't know. Now another story, just to reinforce this idea of how little sexual education was there in ancient times. There's another story of the Talmud where a rabbi finds his disciple underneath his bed while he's having sex with his wife. So the rabbi is having sex with his wife, and he hears someone that sneezes, and he says, "Who's there?" And he goes underneath the bed, and he finds his student, and he says, "What are you doing here?" And the answer of the student is, "This is also Torah, and I need to learn. I need to learn.
Oh my God.
Somehow I need to learn how to do things.
Yeah.
And if no one is going to teach me, I'm just going to learn by myself." So, and that's also a story that we use a lot when we work with teenagers to, to explain them that sex is something we need to talk, and it's not, no one is going to know how this works just because of a heavenly voice. So we need to talk about this. And also it has a lot of power when we try to transmit the idea of intimacy. Again, so she's saying he will tell you what to do. You go, you dress up, you put perfume, you shower, you are beautiful. You wait until he eats and drink, and when he's done and he is lying down, you uncover his feet and he'll tell you the rest. So she replied, this is Ruth now. She replied, "I will do everything you tell me." So her answer is, okay, I buy this plan. Whatever you say, I will do it. So now we have, in terms of a literary analysis of the text, what Naomi did was the command passage, and now we are going to see the performance passage. Meaning, Naomi said, and we are going to see how Ruth does according to what Naomi said. So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed her. Boaz ate and drank, and in a cheerful mood went to lie down beside the grain pile. Now, what's the text adding here? The cheerful mood. Because that's something Naomi cannot know from ahead of time. But now the narrator of the text, the redactor of the text, is telling us additional information. He was in a cheerful mood. He went to lie down beside the grain pile, which, by the way, grain and pile, two things that imply, first of all, grain implies fertility, abundance, and pile, it's a pile. There's some phallic imagery here. Then she went over stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. In the middle of the night, so now the text is telling us this is going beyond normal hours. So this is a problem. Why this is a problem? Because women were not allowed to go alone in the middle of the night in a city. So she went to the threshing floor during legal hours because he was eating and drinking, and she was just hiding behind a pile of grain or something. But now it's the middle of the night. So now there's room for intimacy. No one is out there on the streets, and whoever is out there on the streets, we don't want them to see Ruth with Boaz, because if they see them, then they can assume they had sex, and if they had sex, then they have to get married. So in the middle of the night, the man gave a start and pulled back. There was a woman lying at his feet. So he didn't realize. Until this moment, he had no idea of this thing, of the idea that Ruth was there. There's some play here with the idea of darkness, right? In the middle of the night, and it was dark there. That's why he didn't see her. So it's all dark. There's all this foggy atmosphere. So the man gave a start and pulled back. So what happened here?
What are you?
What happened? How did he realize that she was there?
You could see it. He woke up.
He felt her. He felt her.
I felt her.
He felt her. Okay, so there's now contact. So see how the text created this from Naomi saying, there's this man Boaz, go stick with the maidservants, and now they are touching each other at the threshing floor in the middle of the night. He had eaten, he's drunk, and she is anointed with oils and perfume and all this, and he says, "Me at, who are you? Who are you?" he asked, and she replied. Now, who are you connects us with chapter 2. When he first sees Ruth, he says, who is this woman? Now, the who are you now can imply A, that it's too dark and he doesn't know who is there. B, that he's not expecting anyone. And C, that he didn't recognize Ruth. Perhaps Ruth was so beautiful that night, as opposed to the Ruth he first met in the field when gleaning the barley. And now he says, who are you? It's dark. You look beautiful. You're touching me. So she said, Anochi Ruth Amatecha. Again, so she says, I am your handmaid Ruth. And if you remember, I explained last week that whenever a woman says, I am your handmaid, she's diminishing herself to look more attractive. She's trying to, we read the passage when Abigail, the one who will later marry King David, said, I am your handmaid, I am your servant to King David. As a way to seduce. I mean, again, he's naked or half naked, they're alone, middle of the night, he ate, he drank, and she said, I am your servant. So, spread your robe over your handmaid, for you are a redeeming kinsman. So what does it mean? Spread your robe. Protect me. Okay, so it could have a symbolic meaning. Meaning protect me, redeem me. As he said, do you remember in chapter 2 when he said, I know who you are and that you have came under God's wings to find refuge in him. So there's some parallel between the spread your robe and redeem me. But also it could be literal.
Right.
Spread your robe and redeem me, meaning take off your clothes, cover me, and embrace me. Make me your wife. Make me your wife. So she is, and it's, in the first class I explained that one of the things that I find unique on this book is how this is the opposite gender role and power distribution of the whole Bible.
Right.
The women are leading the story here. She is telling him what to do. As opposed to what Naomi said, he will tell you what to do. Now she is telling. Up until here, she did everything that Naomi said. And now, she's changing the course of the events because she is taking the lead. She is doing whatever she wants to do, and she says, then spread your robe over your handmaid, for you are a redeeming kinsman. He exclaimed, I will read in Hebrew first. He says, Brucha atla Adonai biti. So he says, blessed are you to Adonai, my daughter. Now I want you have the whole book of Ruth there. So I want you to go to chapter 2, verse 20. 2:20. Am I right? Is this 2:20? Yeah. So,
What page?
Page
25.
20.
What page is
when
it?
25.
25.
Okay.
So when Ruth told Naomi that she was gleaning on Boaz's field, you remember that conversation? Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, Baruch ul Adonai. So Naomi says, blessed be he. And now we go back to chapter 3, verse 10. He says, be blessed of the Lord, daughter. So there's a parallel between that verse and this verse. She says, Baruch ul Adonai. Naomi says of Boaz. Now Boaz says of Ruth, Brucha at Adonai. Meaning, God is everywhere here. They are both invoking the name of God to bless each other. First, Naomi blessed God for having put Boaz in the way of Ruth. And now Boaz is blessing God for the fact that Ruth is there. And he says, be blessed of the Lord, daughter. Your latest deed of loyalty is greater than the first. So what's the first and what's the latest?
The first is the field, working in the field.
The first is?
Working in the field?
No. What's Ruth's first act of love?
With Naomi.
To her
To the married law. And what's the last one?
Yeah, to-
There in the
Giving
threshing
her up.
floor. So he's saying, your latest deed of loyalty is greater than the first, in that you have not turned to younger men, whether poor or rich. And now, daughter, have no fear. I will do in your behalf whatever you ask. For all the elders of my town know that the fine woman you are. So what is he offering?
Himself. You will kind of get married
Well,
to.
He's letting her know that she is respectable in his eyes, even though she has come to him in the darkness of the
Okay,
night. That's
and
what-
why is she respectable? Because the fact that she is going to him means that she hasn't gone to anyone else. She hasn't gone to anyone else. Meaning, if she is now at the threshing floor with Boaz, as young and as beautiful as she is, Boaz is saying, wow, you are a true Eshet Chayil, because you could have gone to any young person as beautiful as you are and sleep with them, and you are coming to me. Boaz thinks, and of course we know that's part of the reason, Boaz thinks that she is here because of loyalty towards the tribe, because he is the redeeming kinsman. So he says, blessed are you because you came here, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you try to identify the language here, it feels, we were on all this erotic crescendo, and now it feels like a father talking to his daughter. Daughter here, daughter there, I will protect you, I will. So she was uncovering his feet or his nakedness, and he is saying, my daughter, I will take care of you, I will protect you, but it feels less like an erotic conversation and more like a father to daughter conversation. Why? Because there's an age difference, there's a considerable age difference, and because he has other plans, and we will see. So now this is a turning point in the story. Verse 12 says, but while it is true that I am a redeeming kinsman, there is another redeemer closer than I. So he has bad news. You remember we talked about the redeeming role. So the closest relative to Ruth and Naomi has both the right and the obligation to redeem them and their piece of land. So redeeming them means restoring their dignity and helping them. Redeeming the piece of land means making sure that that piece of land is bought within the tribe, so that the tribe, in this case the tribe of Judah, doesn't lose its territorial integrity. Because if someone else is going to buy the field that once belonged to Elimelech, and let's say that someone else comes from the tribe of Reuben, then we are losing a piece of the tribe of Judah to someone from the tribe of Reuben. So he is saying there is a closer redeemer. So he thinks that she's going there with all this seductive plan, not only because she wants love from him, she wants him to redeem them. And he says, I would love to, but there's someone, I'm a second cousin and there's a first cousin. Now, we are going to know more about this person in a while, but just for you to have some context, the only person without a name in the book of Ruth is this closer redeemer of Ruth. We don't know the name. Why we don't know the name? So two reasons. First of all, if we don't know the name, we cannot remember him. He's irrelevant to the story. But second, we are going to see how he refuses to marry Ruth later. So if we don't know the name, we don't embarrass him. Had he had a name, we would remember him and his descendants forever as the ones who refused to marry Ruth, who at the end had to marry Boaz, and from them King David, the Messiah, all that. So this would be someone which a lower level of esteem from the Jewish people, because he's the one who discarded Ruth. So the Tanakh, the Bible, doesn't want to record his name, and it says, so now he says, stay for the night, then in the morning, if he will act as a redeemer, good, im igal, tov. Ve'im lo yichpatz legalech, if he does not want to act as a redeemer for you, I will do so myself, as the Lord lives, lie down until morning. Now, why is he asking her to lie down until morning?
Because she's protecting
He's protecting her, that's one thing.
So he's
Time to
protecting
think.
her. So first of all, he's protecting her. Second, if she goes out during the middle of the night, it's not only dangerous, it will spread the voice that she spent the night at the threshing floor of Boaz. Now that could put also Boaz in trouble with this closer redeemer, because the redeemer would say, no, you slept with her, now I don't want her. Now, this is beautiful, because if Ruth represents the extreme love, because we have seen all the good deeds that she did and how she embodies the value of loving kindness in Judaism, Boaz embodies the idea of law. There's love, there's law. So he says, you know what, I love you, I love this, it's wonderful. I have eaten, I'm drunk, I have a young woman, almost naked, on my threshing floor, it's dark, it's a beautiful spring night, I could do whatever I want, but I want to follow the rules. I'm sorry, but no. And we know that Boaz is a good friend of the law and the rule, because he opened his field to the stranger and to the foreigner. And again, this is not love, this is law. He's following the rules. And any person, any relationship, any balanced organization, wherever you want to think it, has to have an accurate balance between love and law. And the preeminent example of this is parenting. You know, I love my kids. I love them. And if it was because of my love, I would have them eat ice cream every day. But there are rules. And the rules are also for their own good. So sometimes you have to put law and love in front of each other so that you follow a golden rule, a golden way in which the too much law means you are too rigid, too strict, and there's no room for other feelings. But too much love could mean that there's no frame to that love. So a healthy relationship has a good measure of both love and law. And Ruth here is embodying love, and Boaz is embodying law. Now, she is showing too much love, and he is showing too much law. That's for us to understand. But at the end, they are going to meet in the middle. Okay? But you see how she is all giving, and it's interesting because we may have thought that the one who is all giving is him, because he is the one who, in terms of material wealth, has more to give. But in terms of love, there's no one who has more to give in this story than Ruth. So she's all giving. She's going there and saying, I'm all yours. And he is showing that sometimes you have to put a limit to love to take care of yourself and of the other person. And you need to say, you know what, this is beautiful, but there are rules. And even if I wanted to sleep with you tonight, there's something that is above that, and that is my obligation to follow the rules. Okay? And that's very important, because that appears so many times in the Jewish tradition, the idea that intentions and wishes and desire is there. We cannot negate the fact. We cannot, erase desire from our nature. As human beings, as animals, we desire. And that's not wrong. What is wrong is not to have a law that is between us and our object of desire, that sometimes is allowed and sometimes is not allowed. So it's not bad. I'm on a diet. Okay? I'm on a diet, and every time I see ice cream, I crave for ice cream. And that's not wrong. Craving for ice cream is not going to make me fat. If I eat the ice cream, then I get fat. Okay? Now, Jewish tradition punishes and condemns more than anything actions and not desires. So he probably wants to sleep with Ruth tonight, but he knows this should happen within the frames of the law. The same act can be within the frame of the law and can be outside the frames of the law, and the consequences are very different. So he wants to play by the rules. It's very disappointing for those of us who were, increasing our expectations on this chapter, because so all the story is like night and darkness, and he is turning the lights on. He's saying, you'll go lie down until morning. So now everything changes. The stage changes, because he's now speaking about morning. He's speaking about light. He's speaking about day, about doing things openly. So he says, you lie down until morning. Why? Because if you leave now, someone is going to assume that something happened. You lie down until morning, and tomorrow we will check. If this Redeemer wants to redeem you, we'll have to forget this affair forever. And if he doesn't, then I will marry you. So she lay at his feet until dawn. She rose before one person could distinguish another, for he thought, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. So in 5 a.m. she leaves. It's not too late, it's too early now. And he said, hold out the shawl you're wearing. So she's wearing a shawl. Hold out the shawl. She held it while he measured out 6 measures of barley, and he put it on her back. Now, we are expecting him to take off her clothes, and he's saying, you know what? Put it back on, and I'll put grain on it. So again, he's being paternal. We were looking for a boyfriend, and we find the father here. So why? Why is he sending her back with barley?
So no.
Not to look suspicious. If someone asks, what were you doing there? I just went to ask for grain. And also to calm Naomi down. Because if Naomi sees the money, she's going to be happy. So she says, you know what? You're going to go with 6 measures of barley. Now, if you remember, and we will see, we'll see it now. So when she got back to the town, she came to her mother-in-law, who asked, "How is it with you, daughter?" She told her all that the man had done for her, and she added, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying to me, 'Do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Did he really say that?
No,
No.
we don't know.
So why is she quoting this?
You might have said what didn't mean.
Okay, so I will show you why is she quoting this. Because he cannot say this because he was not there, but she can say this because she was there in chapter 1. Chapter 1 we didn't have Boaz yet, but we had Ruth and Naomi. If you go back to chapter 1, verse 21, this is Naomi speaking. When she says, "Do not call me Naomi," she replied, "Call me Mara, for Shaddai has made my lot very bitter. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. How can you call me Naomi when the Lord has dealt harshly with me, when Shaddai has brought misfortune upon me?" So she said in verse 21, and Ruth was there, "I came here, I left this land empty-handed, and I'm coming back empty-handed." And now Ruth is emptying 6 measures of grain on the table. So she says that he said, "Do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed." And Naomi said, "Stay here, daughter, till you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." So she says, now we have to wait. We have done everything we needed to do. Now it's interesting because this was not Naomi's original intention. Naomi's original intention is that she has sex with Boaz. But Ruth decided at what point in the story to lead her own life and to do things her way. And instead of telling Boaz, show me what do I have to do, she has a conversation with Boaz. And on that conversation she learns that Boaz's ways are different than Naomi's ways. And if she wants to do this, she will have to do it his way. And his way is playing by the rules and sticking to the law. So he says, now we have to wait. And this is also a very good lesson that we learn, because sometimes things, in order to happen properly, need time. And if they followed their impulse and had sex on that night at the threshing floor, perhaps it was great that night, but it was the first and the last one. And by having some patience and understanding that good things sometimes need a process in order to be accomplished, they will have a long and healthy life together on chapter 4, which we are going to learn next week. Now I want to go back to the photocopies that we have, and with this we will finish today, but this is going to take us some time, 5 minutes I believe. If you go to the last page,
Wait, which one?
the set that says additional sources, Book of Ruth, 3rd class. I didn't prepare any special thing for today because I think the story of chapter 3 itself had enough richness for us to study it. So there's a chart there in the last 2 pages, okay? So that chart is taken from an academic article written by a Bible professor called Harold Fish. The article, I think the quote was missing there. The article is called Ruth and the Structure of Covenant History. Forget about the article. I don't care about the article right now. It's an academic article that was published some 20-something years ago. But this chart is amazing because it allows us here. Are you here?
Yeah, I don't have it.
You don't have it? Yes, it's there in front of you. Oh, you're sharing. Okay. But, no, apparently they ran out of these copies. I will bring more next week. Yeah, I couldn't find one. So look what this article does with this chart. Now what we have here is the 3 stories that we have studied together. The first story is the story of Moab. You remember first class? If you have the first additional set of sources that I brought in the first class, it was the story of Moab. When Lot's daughters raped their own father and they gave birth to two boys, Ammon and Moab. That's story A. Story B is the story of Judah and Tamar that we learned last week. That's Genesis 38. So when I quoted Dina, that's 34. Forget about that. And the third story is Ruth. So now we are going to see the three stories on a chart and see how they have a common pattern and what's the difference between them. Okay? Do you follow me? Okay, so first we have the descent. So it says number 1. It's a chart. How do you call the flow chart? Flow chart. Okay. So you have first the descent. So in story 1 is Lot and Abraham separate. Lot descends to Sodom. In the second one is Judah descends from his brothers. And in the third one, Elimelech leaves Bethlehem for Moab. So the three stories begin with a descent. Every time someone leaves the land of Israel, that's called the descent. When someone goes to the land of Israel, that's called Aliyah, ascent. Yes. Aliyah literally means ascent. So the three stories, Lot, Judah, and Elimelech, begin by leaving the land of Israel, which will open to some kind of tragedy or something like that. The second column says disaster, destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah in the story of Lot. In the story of Judah, death of Judah's wife and his two sons, and Onan. And in the story of Ruth, all the male members of the family die in Moab. So in column number 2, we have another common theme of the three stories, which is the disaster. First the descent, then the disaster. Now we have the Agunah theme, and I want to spend some time explaining this word. Agunah. Are you familiar with the term Agunah?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so who said yes? Explain to the one who said no.
I think it's a woman.
No, I know. Explain to them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I'm right.
You're
A woman whose husband won't give her a divorce.
okay. So
Is that right?
it's right. It's not all of the story, but it's right. So Agunah. Agunah comes from the Hebrew word ogen. Ogen means anchor, like a boat that has an anchor.
Oh, an anchor. An anchor.
Anchor. Yeah.
Bostonian anchor.
Well, encore, we can
Anchor.
No, it's anchor. Okay. I appreciate your patience with my English. It's been a year here, and I think it's improving with time. Give me 10 more years, and it will be flawless.
It's wonderful.
Anyway, so an anchor, what's the purpose of that?
To hold it
To
down.
hold something down to a particular situation. Agunah means an anchored woman. Why?
Holds it together.
An Agunah is a woman who, for some reason, is married. Her husband disappears. She's not allowed to marry someone else, but she doesn't have her husband with her. So that's a technical definition of an Agunah. The issue of the Agunot is a very, very, very important problem in Israel nowadays. Because since in Israel the only way to have a divorce is through the religious court, and according to strict Orthodox religious law, only the man can give a divorce to the woman and not the other way. There are many situations in which a couple separates. He doesn't want to give her the divorce for any reason, for whatever reason he has, he doesn't want to give her the divorce. They are separated, but she cannot remarry. But she cannot be with him because they are separated. So that's an Agunah. That woman cannot make her life, he cannot remake her life. She cannot rebuild her life because she cannot marry anyone else. And there are a lot of organizations, charities in Israel that deal with the Agunah issues. There are many, many, many rabbis investigating how can we find a loophole in the religious law to solve the problem of the Aguna. There's a conservative movement answer to this. There are many actually. One of the ways we solve this is through a clause in the Ketubah. We introduce a clause in the Ketubah that is called the Lieberman clause, in honor to Professor Saul Lieberman, who is the one who invented the clause, that says that in the event that the couple stops living together and is divorced according to a civil court, the groom empowers the Beit Din, the rabbinic court, to give a divorce to the woman on his behalf. So most conservative synagogues, when we do a wedding, we include that clause. Some rabbis believe the clause is not fully efficient, other rabbis believe it's enough. So when we have, for some reason, a man who is divorced in the civil court and doesn't want to give the get to his ex-wife, we enforce that clause and we give her the get on his behalf. That's one alternative. The other alternative that most of the rabbis believe is much more efficient, although it's much more complicated to make the couple agree to this, because when one interviews a couple for a wedding, it's very difficult to talk about divorce. It's not nice, but it's our responsibility. Let me say that the majority of the agunot outside of Israel are because of ignorance. Like a couple gets married and then they divorce in a civil court and they don't know they have to go to the rabbi. It's not that someone refuses. They don't even know that that's the case. And the problem with this is that if the woman remarries and she has a son, that's an illegitimate son because she's married. So a mamzer. So the other alternative that many rabbis encourage is to have a prenup agreement, not an halachic agreement, a real prenup agreement that says that in the case of a divorce, of a secular divorce of this couple, if the husband refuses to give the woman a divorce, he will pay a sum that increases daily to the woman. So by doing that, we force him to give her the divorce, because else he will have to pay millions if he doesn't give the divorce, provided that they have a civil divorce. So that's another way of doing it. There are many ways of doing it, but it's a very complicated topic. Now the Aguna symbol is present in the three stories. In the case of Lot, the daughters say, there's no one else in this world. You remember Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed? The only man available is our father, meaning we don't have any available man which we can procreate. In the story of Tamar, the Aguna symbol is very clear. She can only marry Judah's youngest son, and he doesn't want to give him to her. So she is Aguna. Tamar cannot go with any other man, because according to the law of the Levirate, she has to marry her deceased brother's son, her deceased husband's brother, and Judah doesn't want to give Shelah, that's his name, to her. So she's Aguna because she cannot go anywhere. She cannot marry another person, and she cannot marry the woman she is supposed to marry. And in the case of Naomi and Ruth, they are Agunot because they were left without any men in the family. They all died. Okay, so that's the third column. The fourth column is the idea of redemption. So in the first case, Lot is going to be the redeemer of his own daughters, because he is going to say, here I am the man who is going to allow you to procreate. In the second one is Judah. In the third one is Boaz. Then we have what the author of this chart calls the bed trick. Okay? So in the first story we have Lot deceived by his daughters who get him drunk and hide and only enter the room when he's drunk. In the second one we have Tamar, who disguised as a harlot in order to attract Judah. And in the third one we have the story we just read about Ruth dressing up and going into the darkness to the threshing floor. Then you have the cohabitation. So the first one has Lot drunk, having sex with his daughters. So here there is drunkenness. He's under influence. In the second story, Judah is not drunk. Now he's sad, he just lost his wife, and he doesn't know she is not a prostitute, she is Tamar. But she's not drunk. And in the third one, Boaz is fully conscious of what he's doing to the extent that he can put a limit. You know, if he was drunk, he won't say no. So he's fully conscious. In the seventh column, we have the Levirate union, meaning the idea that all of these men have some legal permission to have something with this woman. And in the third one, we have the issue, the offspring of this. In the first case, the offspring of Lot and his daughters is Moab and Ammon. In the second case, the offspring of Judah and Tamar is Peretz, who is going to be the great-great-great-grandfather of Boaz. And in the third one, we have the son of Boaz and Ruth, who is going to be the grandfather of King David. Okay? So what is this chart teaching us? First of all, what we call in Hebrew, Maaseh Avot Siman Levanim. The acts of the parents are signals or symbols to their sons, to their children. Meaning, you know, they did something, the great-grandparents of this story did something, and their children are going to repeat this story, and their great-grandchildren are going to repeat this story. There is a common pattern in this family. A pattern that has to do with redemption, that has to do with agunot, that has to do with a bad trick, with deceiving, that has to do with migration. There are some common patterns. But on the other hand, there's evolution. Because the story of Judah, as wrong as it may appear, is not that wrong like the story of Lot. Lot is raped by his daughters. Judah sleeps with his daughter-in-law, who is a widow, thinking that she is a prostitute. It's not something nice, but it's far better than sleeping with your daughter. And at the end, we have Boaz setting the law and saying, I'm going to restrain. I'm not going to sleep with you this night because it's not permitted. He follows the same pattern, but he does it legally. Right. So what you see in this chart is how the three stories share common patterns, common themes, but each story is a little bit better than the next one. So it's very interesting because it shows us that on one hand, we repeat our ancestors' stories, and many things. I'm sure I'm not the only one to feel in many moments in our life that whatever I'm doing, I'm hearing my father when he was my age, and I'm doing the same thing, and I'm saying the same thing that I always believe I was not going to do the same way he did. So we repeat those patterns because it's in our DNA, it's in our consciousness. We do it, but we try to do it a little bit better. We are version 2.0. So even though we follow the pattern, we try not to err in the same place. So here you see how Boaz is doing some kind of tikkun. He's fixing, he's amending the story of Judah and of Lot by saying, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to sleep with a relative, which is not ideal, you know, but it's not going to be neither my daughter-in-law nor my daughter. It's going to be a second cousin. I'm going to do it because she seduced me, but I'm not going to do it in the darkness. I'm not going to be raped by her. I'm going to do it openly and legally. In front of all the people. I mean, they are not going to have sex in front of all the people, but they are going to get married in front of all the people. And I'm going to redeem her, but I'm going to redeem her the Jewish way, the kosher way. So that's, I think we can finish with that unless there are some questions or something. But I think it's beautiful to see how the story repeats itself, but it gets better. Yes.
Thank you, said that if a man sleeps with a woman,
Yes.
he's supposed to get married.
Yes.
Now what happens if the man sleeps with a prostitute?
Okay, so it's if a man sleeps with a virgin woman. If a man sleeps with a woman who is not a virgin, then there's an illegitimate relationship. Let's say a married man sleeps with a married woman. She's not considered to be his wife from that moment. she's still her husband's wife, but they incurred in an illegal relationship, and she is forbidden to both. In the case of a prostitute, which of course
So
we
for
assume
the first time,
that's
was
the
her
husband, but we assume there's a chazakah, we say in Hebrew, there's a presumption that prostitutes are never Jewish.
I'm gonna tell you a story.
So they are not subject to Jewish law.
In 1985, when I went to Israel for the first time, and that was
Yeah.
the part that I got so I couldn't believe, because I saw prostitutes in the
And
street,
thieves.
and they were
Yeah, well, that means Israel is a real country. Thanks God. You know. Okay, so one announcement about next week. I'm going to turn this off. So next week is going to be our last class. We are going to